Welcome back to the channel. Today we have a new build. It's a 2012 Acura TL with the tech package. Now, this is a pretty easy job, and if you're looking to get into rebuilding, this is what you want to start with. So why do you want to start with a job like this? Well, it's pretty easy. The car is pretty cheap, it'll sell pretty quick, and it just needs some bolt-on parts. We need a little suspension, a fender, headlight, and a bumper. That's really it. The most expensive part of this is going to be replacing all the bumper pieces because I didn't get a bumper when I bought it. And actually, this isn't even mine. One of the Bodywork gnomes wants to try out rebuilding, so we're going to give him a shot. He's taking the reins on this one, so you're going to see a lot of him in this video. So since the gnomes only show up at night, I can't wait for the Bodywork gnome to show up and do the suspension because I need to get this off my trailer. So I'm going to do it right now. I brought it inside the building because it's cold and rainy outside, and it fits in here. And also, because I'm a sissy and don't want to work in the cold and the rain. So, let's get the suspension changed so we get it off the trailer. Not a good start to the job already. Every mechanic's worst nightmare, the wheel lock. So, we'll see if we can find the key, or we'll just end up taking it off the easy way. And proving wheel locks are useless. We can't check the center console yet. Oh, there we go. I might not have got a bumper, but I got a wheel lock key. So we'll throw our jack under the car. We'll get it underneath the subframe. Good solid place to lift it up. Harbor Freight jack stands for a little jack stand roulette. Pull our lug nuts off and use our magical key. The cotter pin out of our tie rod end. Spin the nut off and knock it out of the knuckle. So our knuckle here is bent. Not supposed to have that much of a curve in it. It's actually hitting the strut. Little dent in the strut there. So we're definitely going to need a knuckle. Sure, the wheel bearing is no good. Strut's got a dent in it. It's probably bent too. So we're just going to get a whole knee assembly. It'll have everything we need. So let's get this apart. So we'll unbolt our ABS wire from our knuckle. And we'll unbolt our brake hose. Then we'll unbolt the brake caliper and bracket. Take the whole assembly off. Set it off to the side. This little pocket here looks like a good place for it. I'll pull a cotter pin off the upper ball joint. Knock it out of there. And now we can get our ABS wire out. It's got some of that Iowa rust on it. It's very similar to Illinois rust. Less corruption. A little penetrating oil on there. Trying to save this. The sensor's not super expensive, but when you're trying to do a budget build, 60 bucks is 60 bucks. So we'll take our time and see if we can save it. I doubt we're going to get a new sensor with our knee assembly. Kind of wiggle it back and forth, and hey, we got lucky. How about that? A little patience, and I saved it. At least until I find out I broke it. Inside. I kind of bolt our drive axle nut. Tap it out of there. Came out surprisingly easy. Hey look, Mr. Spotty showed up for this build. Pull our cotter pin out of the bottom. And because we didn't jack it up high enough, we'll have to use a ratchet to take the lower ball joint off. This is what you get for doing it on the trailer instead of the lift. Which, for some reason, seems to offend some of the experts in the comments. As you can tell, it really bothers me because I continue to work on my trailer. We'll take the knuckle off and in the pile. Now we can pull all these closeout panels off. Expose all of our problems. Oh wait, it's a Honda. It doesn't have any. So I always save the hooks out of the end of bungee cords, but the guys at the shop seem to keep misplacing them, so I had to actually rob one from a bungee cord. We'll use that to hang our caliper out of our way. We'll unbolt the strut and the lower control arm. I'm not a fan of this Honda design. That bolt usually rusts in there. Now we can unbolt the top of our strut from our tower. Put a pair of vice grips on our sway bar link. And we'll buzz the nut off of there. Pull the bolts out of the front of our control arm. Then we'll pull the one out of the back. We'll pry our control arm out. Get the back out. It looks like we're going to have to pry the front too. That is an aluminum subframe, in case you were wondering. In the pile. Now you can finish unbolting our strut. Take that out of there and, in the pile. Now we can unbolt our upper control arm. These things are made out of Playdonium. They stole that from GM. They bend pretty easily. The ball joints actually go out quite a bit on these too. In the pile. So we got our used knee. It's all in pieces. Still a couple pieces left we have to take off. Got an ABS wire that didn't do so good. What's left of a brake hose. And then we'll take the control arm off the knuckle. Let's get that done. So we didn't get a good sensor. We only got half one. So it's a good thing we saved our other one. I win. Pull that out of there. In the pile. Unbolt our brake hose. In the pile. Pull out what's left of our sway bar link. Pile. And we'll get our cotter pin out with our locking cotter pin pliers. Yeah, I could have gone to the other side of the car, but I'm far too lazy to get the brake tool. It's just easier to put these pieces in when they're all apart. The knuckle on the left is our used knuckle. The knuckle on the right is the one that came out of the car. You can see it's bent quite a bit. That gives us our camber issues. When the wheel bearings take a hit, they tend to get a bad spot in them and they'll start making noise. So that's kind of the reason I wanted to change everything. Besides, the knee assembly was like $100. Can't go wrong. And it had lower miles than the car itself. So now we'll put our upper control arm in first. We need to put that in because the bolt's going from the inside out. And our strut's in the way if we put it in later. So we'll load it by putting it all the way in the up position where it would sit normally. Then we'll tighten it up there. That way there's no stress on the bushings when we set it back down on the ground. And we'll throw our strut in here. We'll start the nuts up on the top and torque them down with our electric torque wrench. Now we can throw our lower control arm in there. Give it a little tap, tap, tap-a-roo. The front end, and we'll tap the back end. Put the bolt through our strut. Tap that in there. And slide the bolt in the back. And we'll try and line up our fronts. Just have to move it around till the bolt slides in. Then because it has a little tension on it, you kind of need to square it up a little bit. Once that one's in, the other one threads in pretty easily. Now we can tighten everything up. We did load our suspension, that's why the jack's underneath it. That way when we tighten everything up, it'll be compressed. Won't have that wear on those bushings. And we'll let our jack back down. Put our sway bar link in there. Doesn't like to go in because the other tire's on the ground, so the sway bar is kind of twisted. But with a little effort, it goes in there, and we'll tighten the nut down. Click. Now we can tighten up that bolt for our strut to our control arm. And we're ready to put our knuckle on. Set it in the lower ball joint and slide our drive axle in there. Then we'll put our upper ball joint in. And we'll start tightening everything up. Back to our primitive ratchet on the bottom, since we're working on the trailer like a Neanderthal. Tighten up the upper ball joint. And we can throw our caliper on here. We'll let the gnome do the brakes later. We just needed to get off the trailer. Bolt our brake hose in. Now we're going to put our ABS wire in here. Cross our fingers and hope we don't have any lights. Put our tie rod end in. Tighten it up. And we'll throw our cotter pin in there. We'll bend it over. Probably not the right way according to the experts in the comments, but it doesn't fall out. It's the right way. We'll put all of our cotter pins and everything else. Our upper ball joint. And our lower ball joint. Now we'll unbolt our wheel liner. We don't want it dragging on our tire. We're going to need it off anyway, and it's mangled. We did get a new one with our fender. In the pile. I'm going to do a little body work. We'll also give Mr. Spotty a concussion. We just don't want that fender tearing up our tire because there's nothing wrong with our tire. Ship it. We'll put our tire back on. The wheel has some scuffs on it, but those should buff off. Only the center cap because the emblem's missing. Now for the gratuitous trailer unloading montage. Because if I have to do it, you have to watch it. Unless you cheat and skip ahead, I guess. But those people are always exposed in the comments when they're asking questions that were already answered. They clearly skipped over that part of the video. Those are my favorite. The view might be a little different, but it's the same process.
So it starts, drives, and it's off the trailer.
Okay, my job is done here for now. The wheel's straight like it's supposed to be. Put the battery on charge. I couldn't charge it on the trailer because it was only in Davenport, so it was only going to charge for a little bit. So it wasn't worth it. Just jumped it, got it in here. So now it'll sit on charge. Hopefully the battery will be good. We'll find out. So I'm just going to leave it until the Bodywork gnome shows up and he can finish it up from here. I already got him a fender, even in the right color. There's a little bit of work to do in here to get the fender lined up. I think he found a bumper, so hopefully he can get this all back together. So pull the headlight out, some bolts up here, some down here, over here. Pull the headlight out, and the fender, just a couple bolts across the top. There's one inside the door there, and then we're gonna have to take the skirt down and get the last bolt on the bottom. So have fun.
So this concludes Acura TL rebuilding class. Now it's all on the gnome. So we'll pull the bolts out of the headlight. See how much he remembers from class. This is the final exam. And we'll unbolt the fender. Since it's folded over, can't get a ratchet in there, so just use a ratcheting wrench. One bolt in the top. Pull the rocker molding down a little bit so we can get in to that bolt that's in the bottom. Bolt our bolts on the top, and our fender's out. Or his fender's out. It's not mine.
No, bring that back here. What was the first thing you learned? In the pile.
So our apron is pushed in a little bit. It's not a huge deal, but it will mess with our fender and headlight alignment, so we need to get it pushed out. Basically just where the two mounts are. So we're just going to stick a pry bar on the end of it,
Where the bend is.
pop it out a little bit.
There you go.
Moves really easy.
Back a little more.
So just keep working it. Taking all the kinks out of it.
Go back.
If it's not totally straight, it won't matter. We only need the mounts right.
You're up here. You gotta go
So that's
down.
what we're going to do.
Can't get any further down. That's it. That came out real nice.
Go like right here. And then just hold a little tension on it. Pushing out.
Yep.
So now we're going to hammer out the kinks, the crowns,
Taking turn it around.
straighten everything out.
Black spots over there.
He'll keep a little tension on it when I hammer it. Hopefully when he lets the tension off, it should stay. This portion of the video is sponsored by some energy drink, apparently. So we'll just hammer all the kinks out all the way around. Then hammer this little tab at the end over. I don't even think it does anything. Now we caught the Bodywork gnome being a painting gnome. He's priming his bumper. There were a bunch of rock chips on the front of it, so he sanded them all out, put a little primer on him. Then he'll sand that out, paint the bumper. So while that's drying, he's going to swap over his headlights. Put the ballast in a new headlight. Now we're going to swap over the bumper bracket. Didn't come with the new headlight. And now it's time to take care of our bodywork. We'll sand off all the broken paint, all the little rusty areas where the paint was cracked and exposed to the elements and it started rusting. Sand that all down, and we'll scuff up the rest of it. We'll just paint this little part. Never really looked to see what they call this. Part of the apron, rail. I don't know. We'll call it an apron. Looks more like a rail though. And we'll mask it off where it's seamed, and we'll just paint this little part. Well, I won't, since I'm not the painting gnome. Heck, I'm not even there. Little primer. Spray can stuff is good enough. And once that dries, we'll paint it. Single stage black. Nice and easy. The car is metallic, but this would be the underhood color anyway, so it wouldn't have any metallic in it. And the factory doesn't even really paint it anyway. Like a half effort. So once our paint's dried, we're going to put a little cavity wax in there, because we did have the pry bar in there. Might have disturbed the paint. Want to make sure it's not going to rust from the inside out. And now we're ready to put our new fender on. Well, our used fender. No edging required. Happened to be the right color. I actually tried for the right color. The yard I called had a couple, so I asked for that paint code and they had it. We'll run the bolts in there, and we'll put our headlight in. It's a little dull. He had already wet sanded it. He wants to buff it when it's in the car. Our bolt back in the A-pillar for our fender. And the one down at the bottom behind our rocker molding. Now everything's painted, so it's time to reassemble our bumper. We painted the fender, the door, and the bumper. The door is chipped up at the end where it was rubbing the fender. The fender had some scratches from handling, and our bumper was the wrong color. We'll put the little bezels in there and bolt them in. We'll put the outer bezels in, fog light bezels. The gnome hasn't quite learned how to use the bumper installation tool properly. Now you put the grill on. Just clips in. And there's a couple push rivets on the bottom, so we'll snap those in there. Drop the fog lights in and screw those in. You got to use bumper assembly. It came with all this stuff, so it kind of saved them some money. Buying all those little parts individually would have cost quite a bit. So now we can throw our door back together. We'll put the mirror back on. Okay, we're gonna try to put the mirror back on. And we'll bolt it in. Now we're gonna put our belt molding on, which we should have done before we put the mirror on, but, well, you gotta learn. Most belt moldings go on before the mirror. But I had to put a few belt moldings on to figure that out, so guess I can't blame the gnome. Put the gaskets in the door handle. Then we'll slide the door handle back in and plug it in. And I guess that's all you need to see of that, because he didn't record anything else of putting the door panel on, but I assume he did it. And we'll put our vent on for the brakes. We also put the baffle in for the airbox. That was actually new. Couldn't find a used one, and our other one was broken off. So now I show up to do the hard work. Put the emblem on. Just sets in there. There's 2 screws on the back. Click. I brought the torque wrench. That's why he couldn't do it. Click. And now the bumper's ready to go up. Apparently I only showed up for the emblem part. I'm gone again. So the gnome's on his own. Slide the bumper in. And if you got everything in the right place, it should clip right in. Put a couple bolts in the top so it doesn't end up on the floor. And clip it into the bracket under the headlight and on the fenders. I think the gnome needs to borrow my bumper installation tool. Flip in the other side. And we'll run our bolts across the top and the front. There's one screw in the back, holds the back of the bumper on to the fender. And we'll do the one on the other side. He was creative. He used a bungee cord to hold the wheel liner back so he could get in there. He gets points for that. I didn't even tell him to do that. Now we'll put our wheel liner on. Start the screws in the back. And we'll turn the wheels so you can actually get the screws in. Makes it easier to get to all the fasteners. Line them all up. Put all the push pins in. We'll bolt the front of it up. Put our clips in our rocker molding. And put our screws in. Click. Our TL is all done. Nice, quick, easy job. We did take it for our inspections. He put brakes on it. He did an oil change. Cleaned it up. And he started driving it. He really liked the car, which is part of the reason he bought it. Although he did put it up for sale and managed to sell it while he was driving it. I had to run it over for the safety test. It is a pretty nice car, if you can get over its quirky looks. And the most valuable learning experience the gnome got out of this whole rebuild was that the boss does a lot more than just give him a hard time and sit around making videos. Interior cleaned up really nice. Sorry, you don't get to find out what's in the console. That's only for series builds. This one was too quick. I assume it's gnome treats and extra bolts. So the gnome's first rebuild was a success. These are the kind of builds that you should kind of start with. You could easily do a job like this in your garage, no problem. Your neighbors probably wouldn't even complain. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.